When my husband and I first started dating, I invited him to my mother's house for a visit. And throughout the course of the visit, he observed the picture frames on the wall and the pictures in them and went through our family photo albums and explored the memories of my childhood. But eventually, he turned to me and jokingly said, "You must not have been a cute baby." So I asked, "Why do you say that?" And he says, "Because I don't see many pictures of you from your childhood." Well, he was halfway correct. I was, in fact, a gorgeous baby. But he didn't see many pictures of me from my childhood. And that was because at the age of 6 months, I was diagnosed with a congenital heart disease, a VSD for any of you cardiologists in the audience. And over the course of the next decade, my parents bravely supported me through countless hospitalized cases of pneumonia. Now, my mother was certain that my bouts of pneumonia and my heart condition were related. But my pediatric cardiologist determined it was not and refused to see me. Now, like any other mother, mine became worried and concerned because my health continued to deteriorate. So she decided to start calling the cardiologist's office on almost a daily basis, hoping that someone, some person, would have mercy on both of our souls and agree to see me. But every time she called, she got the same response: her heart condition and her bouts of pneumonia are not related. Well, after a particularly long stint in the hospital, she called the cardiologist's office once more. This time, a nurse took the call. She could hear the desperation in my mother's voice. And in that moment, that nurse had a choice. Would she use her power to advocate for this woman and her child, or would she rush her off the phone like all the rest? She chose to advocate, and after months of begging, I was finally able to see the cardiologist. And guess what? My mom was right all along. My heart condition and the bouts of pneumonia were related. I was given 6 months to live. At the age of 11, I underwent open heart surgery. But after my open heart surgery, my health was restored. I never suffered from another bout of pneumonia again, and I haven't visited a cardiologist in almost 30 years. Thank you. That nurse's decision to give me that appointment was the difference between life and death. Her choice to act with compassion, empathy, and mercy saved my life. That nurse used her power of one. The power of one is the power of the individual through his or her own ordinary, everyday words and actions to influence extraordinary change. The power of one is when we use our talents and skills to positively influence others. It's when we lead from where we are and use what we have to make a difference in the world. Now, it's not the perceived authority or power or superiority that we tend to give people based on their titles, connections, possessions, and background. That type of power is superficial and has little bearing on our ability to positively influence others. In fact, that perception of power allows us to excuse ourselves from the problems around us. It allows us to justify being passive and complicit when we witness incivility, harm, and danger. Those with superficial power tend to operate without a purposeful, proactive intention in the pursuit of the greater good. And when we operate that way, we are operating in what I like to call default mode, meaning we do little to nothing when we see others in harm and distress. Well, maybe we complain, we gripe, we definitely tweet, but we take no real action. And that is when we are ineffective at best or unintentionally harmful at worst. Those operating in default mode have the ability to wound, paralyze, and destroy the people and circumstances around them. I was almost paralyzed by someone operating in default mode. You see, for the past 20 years, it has been the driving mission of my entire professional career to bring about a change in the culture of the workplaces in America. Whether I'm working as an HR executive, a college professor, or a workplace consultant, or a labor and employment law attorney. But before I earned any of those titles, I worked at a mid-sized law firm in Montgomery, Alabama. And in fact, it was while working there that I was inspired to go to law school. Now, although none of the attorneys there looked like me, I thought, you know what? I've got the intellect, I've got the ambition, and I've got the wit to succeed. It also could have been that I grew up in the 80s and watched The Cosby Show and was idolized Claire Huxtable. I don't know. But on my last day before I left for law school, one of my colleagues, the only other African-American female, came into my office and shared with me that she was in one of the senior partner's offices, and when he saw her, he said, "Good luck in law school." To which she said, "Oh, no, you're confused. I'm not going to law school. Natasha is." To which he said, "Oh, so who are you?" Now, she had worked there for 5 years. I had worked there for 3. But to this man, we had become one person. One of us was invisible. After hearing this, I not only felt invisible, but I felt unremarkable. And to be honest, I felt worthless. I started to question, who was I to think that as an African-American woman, I would ever be seen with any credibility or any value in this field that is already so underrepresented by women and minorities. I began to be paralyzed with self-doubt, pity, and fear. I had fallen victim to someone operating in default mode. But don't worry, my self-pity, doubt, and fear didn't last long. And a few years later, I was sure to send that partner a note reminding him of who I was after I became a professor of labor and employment law at Georgetown University. But that was a defining moment for me because that's when I found my own power of one. And I was glad that happened early in my career because it encouraged me to use my power of one to cultivate engaging workplaces where employees are respected, where genuine leaders are cultivated, and therefore top performance is achieved. I don't know about you, but I think the business leaders of America owe it to their workers, their shareholders, their boards, and their communities to build successful businesses, but not on the backs of exploited labor and wasted potential, but on a firm foundation of a healthy, thriving corporate culture where the value and dignity of every employee, regardless of your race, creed, or background, is appreciated, where civility and kindness are seen as strengths to be championed rather than weaknesses to be avoided, where everyday people can come to work and do ordinary things but influence extraordinary change. But listen, if this vision of equality, civility, and respect in the workplace is going to happen, we just can't all sit back and think it's going to magically appear. And no, leaving nasty comments about your boss on Facebook and Glassdoor isn't going to do the trick either. Instead, we must face our own default mode. We must reshape our own thinking, lead from where we are, and realize our individual ability to affect change. Lily Ledbetter became a modern-day pioneer for workplace equality when, after working for 18 or 19 years at her job, she got an anonymous note. And this anonymous note informed her that she was making significantly less than her male colleagues doing the same work. So after learning this, she was upset, of course, and she filed a lawsuit. But under the Civil Rights Act of 1964, she only had 180 days to file a pay discrimination complaint from the time the pay decision was made years ago. And how would she know? So when she went to court, she lost. She was years too late. But she said, this can't be right. I'm going to continue to fight. So for 10 years, she relentlessly fought all the way up to the Supreme Court of the United States of America. But the Supreme Court said, Lily, you're years too late. She never received a dime of restitution. Her case was over. But despite this, she relentlessly pursued equal pay at work for others. And because she chose to use her power of one, her power of advocacy, the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act of 2009 was enacted. And under this act, each and every time you get a discriminatory paycheck, the clock starts over. Yes. Yes. History has shown us what can happen when we use our individual abilities to impact change even outside of the workplace. You see, in the mid-1850s, slavery was rampant throughout the southern United States. While many in the North were either unaware of the inhumanity, they ignored it, or just didn't know what they could do to help. Meanwhile, Harriet Beecher Stowe and her family were busy helping slaves escape slavery through the Underground Railroad. But that wasn't enough for her. She wanted to end slavery. But what could she do? She didn't hold political office. She didn't have any fancy titles or positions. She didn't have great wealth. And as a woman living in the 1800s, she didn't even have the right to vote. But what she did have was her gift of writing. And she used her gift of writing as her power of one to write the book, Uncle Tom's Cabin. Uncle Tom's Cabin awakened the nation to the inhumanity and cruelty of slavery and prompted thousands to join and fund the abolitionist movement. In fact, Uncle Tom's Cabin has been cited as one of the primary causes of the Civil War, which ultimately led to the end of slavery. Harriet Beecher Stowe was proactive and intentional in her pursuit of the greater good. You know, it's rumored that when she had the opportunity to meet President Abraham Lincoln, when he greeted her, he said, "So, you're the little lady that started this great war." Every single one of us has the power of one. When I think about my childhood experience facing death and the people who helped save my life, the first person I think about is the nurse that took that call. Then I think about the housekeepers who would come to my room and keep it clean and sterile so I wouldn't develop an infection, but who would stay behind just a couple of extra minutes and chat with my mom and keep her company as she sat at my bedside. And I think about the day I was released and how the person who wheeled me out seemed just as excited as I was that I was finally going home. But if you notice, none of the people that I just mentioned had prestige or sat at the top of some organizational hierarchy. In fact, I don't even remember their names, but I will never forget the way they made me feel. That was their power of one. The power of one is what we are leveraging when we take a step outside of ourselves into a place of awareness, compassion, and generosity. It is the power of our silence to bring shame, but the power of our words to inspire action. It's the power of our biases to shut the door on someone else's opportunity, but the power of our convictions to open those doors once locked and bolted against us. It is the power of our self-absorption to be blinded to the needs of those around us, and the power of our voice to advocate for the underrepresented. Edmund Burke said, "The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is when good men do nothing." That means if you have knowledge of inequality or injustice in the workplace or beyond, you do not have the right to remain silent. And hear me when I say, the power of one is not bestowed upon individuals on the basis of some subjectively determined worthiness. It's a power that you carry with you throughout every moment of every day. It's a power independent of your job title, your mailing address, or your bank account. It's a great equalizer. The other day, I saw a video of a homeless man singing to a little girl with autism. And the mother of that little girl said that that homeless man was the only person that could make her little girl smile. Take a moment and reflect. What powers do you have inside of you to positively influence others. If we're going to use the power of one to cultivate goodness in our schools, homes, and offices, we must be proactive and intentional. We must face our default mode, our biases and prejudice, looking beyond what we see or even what we've been told to see, and see our own humanity and the humanity of others around us. We can no longer depend on those with superficial power or institutional authority or even our political leaders. If we want to see change, we must be the change we want to see. Each and every individual in this audience, you have the power to use your own everyday, ordinary words and actions to influence extraordinary change. To paraphrase a common saying, never underestimate the power of one to change the world. In fact, it is the only thing that ever has. Thank you.